So as I looked at the session, I wasn't supposed to be leading this, John Teza, unfortunately. We hear all about the great news about private equity. And John Teza was supposed to lead this session, and he got a call. He has to be on an all-day board call with his private equity firm. So I got the job here. For people who don't know me, I'm Zach Fishman and Jake Fishman's father.
Check.
And Sherry Fishman's husband. She just gave me that look.
AKA Papa Fish.
So
What?
we've been hearing all about the great excitement about franchising, and I'm very, very lucky to have a phenomenal panel with some very good, and I hate to say this, old friends. So I'm gonna let Shane go first, give a little description, tell us a little bit about yourself, because everyone here is a founder. So they've all been in your steps, they've all been in your footsteps. They've all made decisions. A lot of them are really, really, really good, but there's been a few bad ones along the way. So Shane, I'm gonna let you start.
Okay, before we get started, can we have everybody move to the center of the room, please?
Can we what?
Move to the center of the room, please.
Come closer.
She would like everyone to come closer,
Nobody wants to.
just in case you guys are still hungry for someone else's lunch.
Okay, that didn't seem to work very well. I apparently did not own that very, very well. Steve asked for it. I was just trying to follow up.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there you go.
Boy, does this feel like home.
Yeah, sorry. I am Shane Evans. I am the co-founder of Massage Heights. We are a membership-based massage and skincare concept. We are a family-owned brand. I co-founded it with my husband. I have a brother that I got involved in the business as well, and he's a partner. We have another company that is our distribution company called Summit Franchise Supply, which supplies all our FF&E and ongoing things. And then we've got another little brand that we're invested in called the Gents Place, which is an ultra-premium men's grooming brand.
Okay, Sammy.
Sam Ballas, East Coast Wings and Grill founder. Also managing director of a coaching firm, Zorability. And we also launched years ago a commissary company to help supply our franchise model. And we also have a fast casual that we were hoping to launch as a re-imaged product in 2020. And you know what happened in 2020, so we are launching as we speak that product.
End of 2021.
Yeah, in 21, and based on what I found out about restaurant equipment during David Barr's speech, it may be 2022. Who knows? If we can find equipment in time.
Steve.
So, Steve Greenbaum, I guess I'll never stop being the founder of PostNet, retail shipping and printing services brand. Started that brand in my early 20s, grew to nearly 700 locations in, at one point, over 20 countries. When I sold the business, in about 12 countries. In 2017, I was approached by a strategic buyer. Learned a lot about that whole transaction and made the decision to sell. After I sold, I'm sharing this just because some of you may be in this situation, woke up the very next morning and went, what the hell did I just do? And if I'm not that, what am I now? So just a little bit of insight. And I decided to form a business called Full Contact Franchising. And the reason for it is because franchising is a full contact sport. I think we would all agree. And so how we, operate in the business and we deal with day-to-day issues and our franchisees and strategy and structure and business process, in my opinion, is all in, open and honest, make it happen, because it ain't gonna happen on its own. I work with a handful of clients now, working with some good friends on launching a few brands because I can't help but have that entrepreneur in me. And then actually this beautiful woman to my side and I, Shane and I, are putting together a program we're working on to work with emerging and mature brands, sort of building a resource for them to come together with like-minded entrepreneurs and franchise professionals and share their struggles, share their challenges, and create opportunities and some accountability. So you'll hear more about that as the time comes on, and I'm really grateful to be doing that with this lady.
Oh, same. Thank you.
So that's me.
So, as I kind of mentioned before, we've heard all the great successes a lot of people have had. It's fun to watch. But when I have founders up here, I'm going a little bit backwards. So I'm going to start with Sam, and we're going to slowly go down. And I gave them literally one question. I forewarned them I was going to ask them one question. And with that can come multiple answers, because when we start talking about it, there are multiple answers. So the original question was, what was your worst mistake you made in franchising? And it's interesting, you're going to go here and think, because when Lane and I really started this whole process of putting this conference together, we saw, unfortunately, so many young emerging franchisors have a bad situation with a consultant, a supplier, a family member, a bad franchisee. And we're like, if we can get a bunch of people together to really talk about what should they not do, if we can help most franchisors make one less mistake, we've done a pretty good job and a great service to the franchise space. So with that in mind, I'm going to start with Sam. And it's funny, when I kind of brought this question, it kind of goes back to what David said. Some of it might have to do with some family members. Sam, go ahead.
So if you can recall David's slide, I did all of the above. I promised Brass that I wouldn't talk about my brother-in-law. I love him to death. We won't go there. So, what do I single down as a mistake? And to preface this era that I made, it took me 8 years to figure out that I made it. I need to preface kind of my background. So I'm by trade an investment banker in background, and I'm a numbers person. So after those years, I left that industry and developed shopping centers and developed a pretty substantial real estate practice in my hometown when I stumbled across the franchising opportunities and the East Coast Wings and Grill launch. So as a preface now, here's what I'll share with you. I come from a immigrant Greek restaurateur background, which bigger and 8,000 pages of menu items was how you built a business. And I launched East Coast Wings and Grill at 4,400 square feet and drove that to 5,200 square feet. And 6-7 years in development of the brand, I walk into a meeting and I get a report actually of our Philadelphia store here in Philadelphia. And they said to me, Philly cost $1,080,000. I'm like, what the hell did y'all just say? $1,080,000? How are you going to sell a franchise that costs $1,080,000 to develop? And so I looked at all the data and thought, how did I miss that? How did I allow us to drive a model of unit-level economics, which is what I'm known for and the brand is known for, and quite frankly, we're a regionalized franchise model, and I tell people all the time when I speak on stage, I'm the 800-pound gorilla of ULE at my size, regardless of what brand you're at and how big you think you are. That is our philosophy and our bloodline, and I allow that to happen. So re-engineering that model for 2 years, driving that down to 3,000 square feet, and then sustaining the same $2 million AUVs, it was kind of, do you hang yourself now from depression, or do you go back to franchisees and give them checks back for the mistake that you had made? So we spent a lot of time and energy trying to figure out with those larger stores, what can we do to bring more value engineering to those units that, frankly, I allowed to kind of happen with that right team and at that time. So, the B part of that is, if you remember David's slides this morning, he did a great presentation for you guys. I allowed that to happen subliminally because I thought I had the right intellectual capital managing that for me. And being that I was the numbers person, I should have been more foresighted to stay in tune with the intellectual capital to make sure that we were following the disciplines of how to drive the P&L and the unit level economics. And it's not just the top line revenue. As you're growing the brand, there's always that GA, that middle part of the P&L that can bite you, that you need to arbitrage on an annualized basis, quarterly basis to make sure. So, we could talk about this till tomorrow morning when y'all, get home. But for me to share in this group, I think, losing the sight of driving the growth of the brand, and we were growing. People were buying the brand at that type of franchise disclosure document, at that type of range of development, and then realizing after we saw that era Now you're looking at a $580,000 development for the same revenue, for the same EBITDA. We finished last year at 17.03 unit average EBITDA during COVID, which was fantastic because wings travel like pizza did last year. So that was, for the share, that's probably my biggest miss, to give those who are in the restaurant space here or have any physical plant space to be very, very careful. You value engineer your space.
The moral of the story is, as being originally in the Carolinas, real estate was cheaper as you go up through the Northeast to major metropolitan marketplaces. So it took a little to figure it out, and he went through the aggravation, but now he's in a better place as he grows his system. Shane?
Gosh, I have a laundry list. I won't go for them, but it's one of the common themes is it's very hard to do business with family, and so I'll leave it at that. I'm still married. I still have brothers, but it's hard. And I recently stepped away as the CEO of our company, so for the first time in 17 years, I'm no longer running the company I founded and just hired a really great CEO, and I couldn't be happier, but should have done that sooner. That's one thing. But I think the one thing, if I could just for newer franchisors, is that it was a really frustrating thing to fix. And for a lot of brands, it works well. I don't know very many of them, but the area rep model. So area representative or area director, or, master franchisee, or kind of whatever you want to call it. But
is everyone familiar here with the area rep model? Probably the biggest one everyone knows about is that's how Subway was built.
Yeah. So we used that model in 08, 09, and we crushed it. I mean, we sold a lot of territory. And it's attractive because, we're looking at Dallas-Fort Worth market, and it can hold 40 units. That's a $450,000 contract, right, with a development schedule over time. And we did a lot of that. And then the economy tanked in 08, 09. People couldn't get financing and all of that. But I think the thing is the reason I don't think it's a great model is that you're putting somebody in a position to act like you, the franchisor. You're expecting them to, handle their own lead generation and recruitment and real estate and operations, support for their franchisees and marketing and really be you. But they're also a franchisee, and so their interests are really aligned with their franchisees. And in some ways, it's just not effective. And I think that it does kind of create a barrier as far as getting the culture really to where you need it to be. When there's this layer that you feel is sort of in the midst of you and your franchisees. And so, again, I think in some models it works pretty well, but I spent years trying to get developers out of our system to get back to the closeness with my franchisees and being seen as the leader and not this person that they were sort of, the corporate said this or what have you. So I'm sure, again, it's great from a capital perspective. In the beginning, we didn't have to take on partners. I mean, that was really awesome. But there's also, there's people that are really good at sales, and there are people that are really good at service. And you don't generally get both out of the same person. So I'd have a really great area rep that would award a lot of franchises in a territory, but the franchisees would never see that person again. And we're just writing big checks, right? And we're still having to send in our own corporate support staff to be able to work with these franchisees. And so I'm not saying it's absolutely terrible, but I think you have to be really careful about I think certain brands it probably works better for models, and I also think you have to be really careful about who you bring into the system. And it's probably not the first franchisee you're ever going to get. It's somebody that's really more experienced, that's been in franchising before and really gets it. So, mistake.
And from a private equity standpoint, you've heard a lot of private equity. You remember you're losing your revenue, part of your revenue stream, because it's a share model. And with that, most franchisors, and especially PE firms, like to control their revenue model.
Well, and you get territories just tied up, right? So that's the other thing.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have any. That was going to last. No, actually, I made that mistake, Sam, because I was real proud of this beautiful store that I was building. And actually, a dear friend who's the late Fred DeLuca actually came into my business and looked at it and said, "You're spending way too much money on your build out and you're pushing." So done that. both area developers and family.
Yep.
But I'll try to shake it up a little bit, and you're going to make mistakes, so expect to have a bunch. It's not that you make them, it's how you rebound from them. So actually, this is really interesting, but awesome PR firm of mine helped me to be on the show Undercover Boss. And so I'm sitting there. They might be in this room, but I'm just saying. But anyway.
Yeah. It's in the contract.
It pretty much is. Oh, yeah, I did name the character after Brad.
It looked like me.
In any event, it was interesting because I have grown up in that business. I knew everything about it. I developed 400 independent mail and parcel centers before I franchised, and then we added the additional. So well over 1,000 locations, knew every franchisee, and I would have bet you there's nothing I could not know about my business. And when I went on that journey, and I pride myself on being, culture is, my middle name, man, and making franchisees feel close and at home. And so anyway, I went through that journey, and when you're in that role, you're acting as an employee and meeting with the employees of your franchisees. And as I was doing that, I realized that I had two things. One is, I had no clue who they were, what they cared about, or what mattered to them. I knew every franchisee, almost all their children, and everything about them. But I knew nothing about our franchisees' employees or the people that were serving the brand's customers. And the other thing was, they knew nothing about our culture. Zero. And so that was a huge miss on our part, quite frankly. And you hear a lot about culture. So it's harder for us to get close to our franchisees, team members, but we can work with our franchisees to talk about the value of how they, in other words, when you have shared vision and values and culture, you know what it feels like when you're aligned with the franchisees. Imagine if their employees or the people serving our brand had also those shared vision, shared values, and aspiration. So we spent a lot of time after that big, massive miss, making sure that everyone the brand touched, and that was really kind of our goal, understood what we cared about, what we valued, what was central to the brand, how we put people first, and it made a massive difference in the business. Our Net Promoter Scores went off the roof. 90% range. So as you think about culture, and I've heard a lot about it today, don't just think about your culture between you and your franchisees. Think about the end user and the folks that are impacting them.
So much of the culture, though, that you have in your stores, right, is because of the franchisees you choose. And if they're culturally aligned, they kind of create that culture within their locations.
They do, but if we don't give them the tools and share the why and help them to understand the value, they're busy. We all know this. They're busy. They're doing all kinds of stuff for us, for their families. So it's making it something that they need to know is important to the success of the brand is really powerful.
Sherry, how many undercover bosses have we worked with over the years? 15 plus?
More than that, yeah.
Well, you have another one at the table, by the way.
Yeah, you look at everything. But you look at everything, and the common, like you said, people like Steve and Shane, and we have so many friends of ours, they think they know their business backwards and forwards and sideways. They know everybody out there. And I have not seen an episode where they're like, wow, I really didn't know this thing about this person or this team member, or they didn't understand the culture. We work with a concept called walk-ons, and they do the big cheering thing and get all excited, but there's people that have real day problems. Employees have real day problems. We're talking about big multi-unit, Gary's in the back there, and he started out with one location. And you get to know your employees, like, as Steve kind of mentioned, this franchise, their name. When you get 20, 30, 40 locations, you don't know them as well anymore. You get into various different concepts. Johnny knows that. He's into Sport Clips and Pet Supplies Plus. You can't know your staff and all your employees like the way you used to. And so the franchisees go through that. As any other business grows, it affects your business. Your culture is not the same. And you hear David talking about it is a pretty good thing. Is the biggest observation, and I've heard David speak frequently, and him and I travel on vacations with David, so I've heard him talk a lot. And one of the biggest things is you forget what it's like to go out into the field because you don't have time anymore. Visiting your franchisees. And it's becoming a very impersonal world. I mean, who saw Greg Tanner speak today? And you heard him talk about it. He started out when there was beepers. So your ops people had to really be in the field. And now you can text and phone call. My own children, they'll text me about questions. I'm like, are you still kidding me? And people lose communication, and we have to adapt to that. So
let me jump in here quick, Brad. So on top of the culture thing, which is hugely important, you visualize that as a macro, as kind of a beating signal for the brand, right? But what comes out of that, if you do it correctly, is you create this trusting bond with the franchisee, right? When that trusting bond's created, and you become, when you start realizing as an emerging brand that the validation, right, from the franchisee, the success of the franchisee, the life of style the franchisee is warranted from your brand's relationship with them, and all that powerful stuff, that's what makes your brand grow. So when you have the culture intact correctly, and it may take you a few years to realize what that culture really needs to be, you create this kind of subliminal trust factor. So when you have to navigate your ship, and the franchisee trusts you to navigate your ship, it's so much more easier to do that than having a culture not really validated and proofed, where the franchisee, some trust you, some don't trust you. You have bad information flow to the franchisees. You have that distrust with some of that group, and then you've got to make a navigation move with your brand. It's an uphill climb with a ship with no water. It's very, very difficult to move the ship. So culture is like, look at it as a macro necessity, and from that, what do you build? And ultimately, when you realize that without the franchisees, you have no brand, and that means their success model has to be proved and validated before you throttle that growth. I think David said today, or Lane, at 9% of a lot of the attendees are sub 10 or 15 locations. When you decide to throttle your brand for growth, your franchisees are going to be the best pistons in your engine you can have. And so it starts with the culture, and then how does your culture behave with them? How do you hold that culture accountable to build that trust factor, so when you get hit, hopefully not with another pandemic as we got hit last year, you can step in to your corporate office on the 17th of March and navigate a complete operating model your franchisees didn't buy. And it worked because they didn't question anything that you threw at them. They embraced and moved the ship forward. And that's why culture is so detrimentally important as you're building your brands.
So I told them, because everyone loves roundtables. And so I told them, as I've got a whole list of questions, but we talked about it, and we said, let's just open this up really to questions you have. They call this, let's call it a panel of pros. What's the actual title? Growth to whatever.
Panel of growth.
Yeah. So how to catapult your growth. So what we're going to do, let's just open up for questions. Who wants to start?
Let me put it a different way as well. So what have you seen here that you went, wow, that could work for us? Or what have you heard? Or what did you come here wanting to know or find out? This would be a great opportunity to kind of give you the ability in the last session to wrap it up and see if we can answer some of those unanswered questions or things you were seeking.
I'm Tiffany with Outlaw Fit Camp. I'm excited to be here because this is our first in-person franchise event ever outside of the tailgating in Dallas that we've gotten to meet Shane. She's kind of taken us under her wing. It's been amazing. Kind of the reason why we're here. We booked this last Thursday. She said, you have to be there. I'm so glad we came.
After I gave them all my secrets in 3 hours at a dinner.
I know. We bought her drinks.
That does it to a lot of us in the industry.
Welcome to franchise.
So to answer your question, I guess I'm trying to do a check and balance since we're new to franchising and we are trying to gear for growth next year coming out of COVID. How are we doing? Where are we? Are we ready for growth? Are we ready? So all the questions, right? But you specifically, I think your name is Steve?
Sam.
Sam, yes. Before we do this, put it in drive, what's your best advice?
Proof every part of your system. Validate it through your franchisee base you have existing, but you got to proof it, right? Ultimately, you're in franchising. If you look at the definition of franchising, and I don't remember all the wording, but it's basically where somebody's investing in a business model that you have proven and proofed, and you are supposed to have taken as many hits as the founding or the brand, eliminating as many of those hits with the franchisee as possible as they're growing their business. So you have to proof the brand, and you have to inside that culture, you have to create a unit level of economics philosophy. You have to help franchisees. So I'll use my brand for a second. I could have easily been 65, 70 locations today. I'm just sub 40. But I'm more profitable as a company than those 65, 70 locations are in EBITDA as a company, where I see deals going down for a $900,000 or $1 million EBITDA restaurant concept at twice my size. I'm at $1.6 million, $1.7 million in EBITDA as a company. But here's the beautiful part of that philosophy. 90%, 85% of my franchisees are at benchmark of my FDD, which is a 17.03% EBITDA last year in COVID. So I go home Friday afternoons, absolutely no worry whatsoever about my franchisees. So you have to become, inside your culture, franchisee-centric, and ULE driven in philosophy as fast as you can.
He meant 17% over the prior year, I believe.
Oh,
No,
just for the
you're
year.
net.
Just for the year.
For the year
Okay.
of EBITDA for 2020.
Okay.
So you want to hear a quick anecdote, which everyone will appreciate here. I've been very lucky. I've been in the space for a long time. I've invested in a lot of deals and done pretty well. I've had one really big failure in the franchising space.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to
Sherry's
ask you about
Sherry's
that.
laughing. Well, did I just lose this?
Oh,
Hope
you've been
not.
turned off.
Oh, so I've had one big failure in this industry.
You're getting this on film, right?
Yes. So I went into the pest control business. And, owning PR firms, most of the things I've invested have been in the supplier industry. I had 3 partners. One really smart partner. My partner was David Barr. And David and I both failed in this business. And David and I go, I never fail. And he looks at me and goes, I never fail either. I guess when we did it together. Because the business we believed in, we did not understand. It was a great business, but it was our partner wasn't the right, didn't have the same, and this goes back to family members. The partner was going to it. He had a phenomenal business. He decided to leave his wife and buy a bar in West Virginia. And he decided pest business he's kept his regular business, but franchising became unimportant. He just bought a lot of toys because he had a new 30-year younger girlfriend, which became his wife. So it's a failure. But the thing is, you understand your business, put your time and effort into it. As all these people here know their business backwards and forwards. Don't hire employees or family members who don't have the same passion you do. You'll never find the exact passion that we have. I tell people, my business is, I never get a vacation. I get to work from other places, but my phone will go off, and we just got back from Italy. Sherry and I were on a phone call at 12:30 at night in Italy because of an issue with a client. So you got to find the passion. This is why we're all here. People are entrepreneurs, and we love what we do. These guys all love what they do, but we're going to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just try to make them as little as possible.
Well, you're going to have disruption's good. Disruption's good. If you harness disruption and then you visualize a strategy of how to dig out of that, you can call it disruption, inflection, whatever adjective you want to use. That's not a negative if you can strategize a way to maneuver through that. It makes you stronger.
Brad, you had a question in the back from this gentleman.
Go ahead, Jim.
Left side. Oh, that's Jam. Hey, buddy.
Can you guys hear me okay? Sam, Steve, Shane, I know you guys are driven by the numbers. Metrics, data, very important. I'm sure a lot of panelists are sharing a lot of different views on what's really important for emerging brands. And I know most of the people here are emerging brands. There's not a lot of runway, not a lot of room to make mistakes by making the wrong decisions. Based on what you've heard, how do you tell emerging brands here what the right advice is, who the right people are, what is the right source of information that you should be listening to? Because if they listen to information that perhaps is not the right fit for what they're trying to build, they may run out of runway. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can take it going in. I really thought David Barr today broke it down in the simplest and most comprehensive recommendation that I've ever seen presented. So I think that as a foundation is absolutely phenomenal. The other thing I would say, and it's funny because I'm serving in kind of an advisory role now to companies, but just be careful. There's a lot of people out there that are consulting and advising and, find out, how long were you in the business? Did you ever start a franchise? Have you ever been where I've been? Do you know where I'm going? Because there's a lot of people out there that will try to help you start a franchise without doing the research on should you start a franchise. And then, so it's one is advisors, and then the other thing I'm going to say, hopefully to no offense to anyone that may be looking to invest in companies, and I do that myself, is build your business for the right set of values, pour your heart into it, and the money will come. Don't let your end game be a 5-year exit or whatever, because honestly, it's a different mindset. So a piece of advice for me is, talk to the industry. You're here at this event, which is what I would have recommended, number one. Advice from people like David Barr is amazing. Choose your potential advisors really carefully because they can have a big impact financially and otherwise. And then really focus on your why. Because David talked a little bit about this, but your purpose, cause, or passion. What got you into this? It reminds me of, I was thinking about it through this event. You guys remember in Jerry Maguire, when Jerry Maguire was yelling at, what was the athlete's name? Was it Cuba Gooding Jr.? And he was yelling at him about, just go back and play ball because you love it. And everything will come. What do you call it? He wanted the Quan, right? And that, I really connect with that on why build it, how to build it, and it'll all come. It'll all come. That's my advice.
Well, I was just going to say, it's so true. You got to love it because franchising is not easy. It's tough. And I think if you're not in it for the right reason, if you don't want to help people's dreams come true, if you don't go to bed every night and think, did I do absolutely everything I possibly could have done to protect this person's investment, their kids' college funds, their whatever.
Retirements.
Retirement, everything. You're in the wrong. You're doing it for the wrong reason. And as soon as you don't, you're not there, find somebody else that can take that role on because it will get hard. It's going to be really hard. It's really hard in the beginning. If you're already there, you're at 10. We talked about this last week, right? It's got to be more communication, not less, right? It's got to be more consultations. It's got to be more metrics. It's got to be more care and more, all of it. And it's when you don't know what you're doing because you have built a retail business that you're passionate about. Now you're starting a franchise company, which is a completely different thing. It can get super frustrating if you don't have the right people around you. So your question, Jam, people like this. These guys don't just let anybody to conferences like this either. So it's a good place to be around the right people.
And to add to that, because both of them had great advice for you, there's a book called The Five Dysfunctions of a CEO. Mm-hmm. Write that down, Google it, buy it, right? It's a very short narrative.
Who's got the cube?
It's a very.
You have a question? No. Okay, let's throw it all the way down there.
Can I finish my comment?
Yeah, I'm kind of walking around here.
Can I finish my comment?
I told you it's going to be more cash.
But in that book, it's a great narrative. The author creates a true story and a fable kind of mentality, And it really boils down to, not to give the whole book away, but I'll give you a little bit snippet here. As a CEO or a founder in our case, have you done everything that you're supposed to have done or think you should have done? In that book's case, with the hire of a chief marketing officer, in our case, is franchisees at the end of the day. Before you characterize a bad franchisee to an average franchisee to a good franchisee, hold yourself accountable. What have you done today? What do you plan to do tomorrow, especially when you're low in unit count, for that franchisee to trajectory? And the last thing I'll say with that comment for Jam is that I say in my brand to our franchisees, you gotta let us coach you. So my favorite franchisee is a franchisee that's coachable. An emerging brand founder, there's so much talent in conferences like this, in ideas that Steve and Shane are working on, in my Zorability coaching firm. There's so much ability as long as you allow that talent pool to advise you and coach you on what we did wrong so you don't make the same mistakes.
See, and I'm going to throw one more question in. You got to tell all three of these people love their franchisees. Have you ever had a franchise close?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're going to grow to any size, eventually you're going to have a franchise close for whatever reason. They could go from anything from a family or medical, something else comes in, bad location. You thought you picked the greatest location. It's hard, it's emotional, but it's going to happen. And you guys can't take it like you've lost everything. And it's hard to watch a franchisee that you really care about. Sometimes you're going to have a bad franchisee who fails because it's their fault. And of course, they'll blame everyone but themselves. But sometimes you are going to have some really good people not make it. And it's tough. It's really, really difficult.
So a lot of idle money out there, a lot of grants, and just what kind of conversations are you having with your franchisees about, best use of that?
Like PPP type money or?
On the idles on top of it, a lot of
EIDL, like whether they're reinvesting.
Yeah, in my branch experience, we didn't have any franchisees go to the IDL. We definitely had a lot of PPP activity in both rounds with our franchisees, and it was strange for me because most of our franchisees last year, because Wings traveled, didn't have a revenue or economic bottom line problem, but they still got it for the off-ramping. How do we get back to normal, and will I need that capital then, right? So I got to plug the IFA on this. Without the IFA, we not have had a seat at the table for a lot of legislation last year. I mean, there's things that Matt didn't talk about today, like the QUIP in one of those bills that helped all you folks out there accelerate your write-offs on your tax returns that the IFA produced in those negotiations. So we did tackle the PPP. When we saw the PPP money coming into the stores, we have in my company, we have a unit-level economics division. It's got two people that head it, one's an analyst. So immediately we created a spreadsheet of all the franchisees, all the store locations, who got the money, and we started asking the questions we need to ask them. Okay, what is your strategy on how you're going to deploy this money? Try not to use it. If you don't need it, leave it in the money market fund. Deploy it when you have to deploy it. So we did a lot of white papering for our franchisees to kind of coach them on how to deploy the money and how to drip those funds through the system and not blow through it. Because I had a lot of brands bigger than me were calling me August last year and saying, hey, my franchisee got PPP, and they went right through it. And now they're not able to pay the bills. What do I do? I'm not the government. I can't give you no more money. I don't know how to help you. Did you have a strategy when you saw your system going after the cash to coach them on how to deploy the cash? I think a good franchisor should take responsibility in giving that type of advice to the franchise system.
I don't have anything to add to that, but very similar.
Can I comment on
Sure.
the EIDL just for a sec? So I have a fair amount of familiarity with this because I did it for all 6 of my brands, both the PPP funding and the EIDL.
Well, I was going to bring you a microphone.
The important thing on the EIDL, a couple things to remember. Obviously, the PPP everyone's familiar with was forgivable. as long as you used it for qualified things. EIDL, the good thing about it is it has flexibility. You can use it for anything pretty much except cashing out. But the downside of it is it has a lot of restrictions. So you have to remember, it's good long-term money, but when you have it in place, you can't distribute money out. You can't do a transaction. You can't, sell or do anything else. So there's a lot of restrictions in that EIDL until the government gets paid back. So the only advice I'd give is if you're going to take the EIDL, which, is certainly out there, and they're still making loans under it. In fact, they've even expanded the maximum amount up to $2 million now that you can get. If you're going to take that, make sure you have a really good purpose for those funds, right? That it really is going to help you drive growth in the business, or some way that is going to make sure you create a lot more value, because you're going to be restricted on what you can do until you pay it back.
And I think the Restaurant Restoration Fund was kind of the same way. If you take that money, that $50 billion that Congress put down for the restaurant space, you better have a good strategy of how you're going to deploy it, right? Because it had to be spent a certain kind of way by a certain kind of time. And then there's a tax consequence of that money, unlike the PPP. And so we taught our franchisees as a coach process, don't take the grant unless you really have to have. And I think of all our system, maybe 2 stores took that realization grant money.
Kind of change the subject a little bit, because someone mentioned here before, I think Tiffany mentioned it before. When do you really turn on the gas to try to really grow your franchise system for that big jump?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question, because I bet you everyone in this room would say the gas is on, right? I mean, so I think it's probably, Brad, 10-ish units, 10 to 15 units, when you've got your systems down and the majority of your processes in place, where you have the confidence to feel like at least now I'm turning on the gas and I feel like I've got what I need around me. But I think most people go in and the gas is already on, because you're in a hunt to sell franchises. And, I would, again, it's sort of off subject a little bit, but David, I think, did a good job of sort of explaining labor distribution during that time. In other words, the founder is wearing multiple hats. There's usually several people wearing multiple hats in the organization. And just knowing when it's time, whether you have to capitalize it, in other words, not relying on franchise development or franchise sales growth to be able to move forward. But I mean, am I wrong in that assumption that the gas is on the day you decided to franchise? Yeah, I mean, that's the way most people go into it, whether we want to believe it or not. And I'll bet you the gas was on for me too when I decided to franchise,
Well, and the thing is, I think I had a friend, attorney, tell me this at one time. If you decide to franchise, what you do for 1 unit, you basically need the same for 100, 1,000, whatever. What you do for 1,000, you need for 1. So your infrastructure, right? It just grows in field support, right? In your support staff. But ultimately, you need really smart people from the get-go to help build the right systems to do it the right way. So if you're going to do 1, you might as well do 1,000.
Yeah, and you're going to go through all these inflections. I mean, as Steve mentioned, David's presentation today, if you recall the $700,000 location average, and then he'd calculate all this money and these revenues, and at 70 plus, you should be at this break even, et cetera, et cetera. So if you take his, and it was a great presentation, you take that service brand model and you stick it to East Coast Wings and Grill, that turns into 23 locations for us is based on unit volume, right? Average unit volume. We were 2 million, not 700,000 a year. I think with that, you think of royalty sufficiency.
That's
right?
the number one.
So when you start growing and putting the gas
Self-sufficiency.
on, you've got to have the discipline and laser-like focus as a franchisor to think ULE, franchisee, bottom line success, and then when you start putting the gas on, you're building 10, 15, 20 units, 25, 30 units, start strategizing for royalty sufficiency so you're not artificially drawn into that license fee model coming in of dollars to the balance sheet and then transferring that to your P&L and get wrapped up into that necessity of running your business, because you can lose focus very quickly if you get pulled into that license fee economics, so to speak, of that. Am I pretty close, Steve? 'Cause you got more.
100%. 100%. So what's the biggest problem you guys have out there, if anyone's comfortable enough asking? I mean, this is your opportunity and the right group to ask. Nobody's got a problem, huh? Yeah.
Do I go virtual and walk away from brick and mortar because everything is vacant and people saying brick and mortar is dead? My franchise is a medical weight loss franchise where I have 3 components. You come see the doctor, get the prescription for the suppressant medication. You have a bodybuilder in-house, and then you have a plant-based nutritional program because this is big now. It's for plant-based. So I'm getting a lot of people saying, don't spend your money on franchising. Franchising is expensive. Are you crazy? Blah, blah, blah. Go virtual. And then I interviewed customers and patients that we have. We're very successful. We've been at it since 2004. And they all want to come see us face to face. So I'm torn in between, do I go spend the money now, write those checks that are coming up, or do I just pull back and get me somebody to teach me to go?
Well, I'm going to answer that question because it's interesting, and over the years, we've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies. And over the years, you kind of remember a few things. And I'm looking at Sherry right now. You remember we worked with a hamburger concept out of the Carolinas? They had 17 corporate units doing extremely well. And, you know, as everyone knows, as you set up your franchise program, consulting prices are all across the board, you know, from expensive to extremely expensive to less expensive. And they had spent almost a year and a half, they had sold no units. And his wife finally went to him one day, he goes, I liked our life. We had 17 restaurants that were doing really, really, really well. I went into franchising because you told me we're going to make more money, not less money. And they decided ultimately to get out of franchising. And so it's an interesting thing. The question is as you look at this, Eli, you have to decide, is this what I want? They all talked about, well, franchising's hard work. And sometimes it's better off to have your own corporate units and make as much money and not have the stress and aggravation of other people's problems.
Oh yeah, I was part of building 1,000 stores of Quiznos. If you want to know how to lose, we'll tell you. I'll tell you, if you want to talk to me for free, I'll tell you everything you should not do. I met with Eric Weinheimer. He climbed Mount Everest blind. And I asked him, how did you put your team together? He said he put 11 people who all failed on the mountain. And almost, some of them, like they pulled them out, you know. And I said, why did you take losers with you? Because he said, they know how to climb the mountain. And they know where all the problems are on the mountains where they had the issues. So
you see those stupid things online all the time of these great chains that have grown up in the 50s and 60s. And I don't know, a bunch of us are friends with a woman whose Stuckey's was her grandfather. And everyone used to see Stuckey's growing up on the thing. She's trying to start just with the pecan rolls again. And so there's some phenomenal brands, and all you guys know, brands that have Howard Johnson hotels and brands that were icons and that are no longer around. So it's tough. Most brands are not like McDonald's that just keep on growing, growing, growing from, you know, Ray Kroc's idea. So it's a commitment, and you have to look at it. Should you franchise it? Like you said, I'm sure there's going to be interest in it.
I think it really boils it down to you, right?
Well, we would like to franchise it, of course. We are in the process, but do I go virtual or brick and mortar? That's the original question.
But you made a comment about bricks and mortar, and you said you thought that it was dead, I think is the term you used, right?
That's what everybody's been telling me all my friends.
It's not true. It's not true. I mean, quite frankly, I represent, well, Sam's in bricks and mortar, Shane's in bricks and mortar. I'm working with a number of brands that are bricks and mortar, both in fitness and wellness. And in fact, I don't know if it's still the case, but there was some real good opportunities for real estate post-COVID.
Still is, yeah.
Still are. So no, I think it's about the experience for your customer. Is it a better experience online, or is it a better experience in person? Or is it a combination of both, giving them more access and a little bit more personal time, a better strategy?
That's what they all said. They said, pick up the app. It's not the same. I don't know what potassium is and sodium.
And I think to add to Steve's comment, you needed to figure out what your value proposition is going to be, right? So if your value proposition of brick and mortar elevates that value proposition for the services, and you can drive your revenue for your franchisees higher, voila.
Yeah.
You know,
you.
and I think that you will have a better opportunity with brick and mortar to have a better proposition, value proposition than virtual.
Yeah. But I think real estate is coming back, and it's going to come back strong. I don't know about big bucks, but yeah.
Well, I mean, we'll ask the next question is, I mean, what's the most valuable company in the world right now? Amazon. Obviously, they think they can, don't think they did, grow without bricks and mortars. Now it looks like they're going to look at some more bricks and mortars. So people will go all around the thing. So go ahead, Joshua.
Hey, great panel. Thanks for all the input you're giving us and
Thank you.
a little bit of information download the last couple of days. I mean, everything's clear as mud now and just going to go hit the streets and that's it, right? I think probably in where I'm at in the stages, hey, we're just about done, probably 2 weeks away from having our FDD completed. And operations manual, about 2 sections left to go. Hearing all the different stories and all the different, brokers you can go to, sales consultants, give me some stories about those first, 1, 2, and 3 franchisees that you took on. How did you find them? Was it organic? I mean, did you do the selling? Did you, have someone assist you? I mean, what was your network that you got them? Was it PR and what type of marketing you did?
Well, first thing, tell them the name of your company, because we happened to meet at the IFE on Friday, and I talked to him to coming here on Sunday.
It's Joshua Tree. And
Joshua
it's
Tree.
funny,
Love
you
it.
said you signed up, I think, on Saturday or Thursday. I signed up at 6 p.m. Sunday.
Nice. You win.
Yeah.
So let me take it first. Usually, if the idea person, the founder, has an affinity for sales, you see them. I sold the first 100 units at PostNet, literally, and then I trained and managed the sales team for many, many years, and then actually I was. How many
Well, at the end of the
events did I
day,
do
when he stopped
being a
managing the
selling
sales team, sales went down.
But anyway, the point, I don't know about that, but the point being is salespeople and the team that you need to build is costly, and you're going to be the most passionate person when you're talking about your vision, your brand, and your business, and they're buying into you. One of the brands I work with in Costa Mesa right now has a little 400 square foot office, and I'm always like, wow, just remember for Discovery Day, it's about you. It's not about the office, it's about the brand, it's about you. And they're about to move into a 3,000 square foot office, and they've had amazing traction. But I think that it's the person closest to the brand with the most passion, unless they don't have that skill set, and then you've got to hire. You've got to hire. But it's hard. You can't pay for someone to feel the way about the brand that you're going to.
Shane?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, we didn't take on any partners. We bootstrapped. I did every role you could possibly think of, leading up to Discovery Days, on the phone with candidates beforehand, like all of it. Training people for the first 6 weeks of operations, taking out a hotel for 6 weeks so I could make sure that they launched, well. And those first ones were organic. We weren't spending any money on anything. It was people coming in and going, oh my gosh, I love this brand. They were customers, they were members. I love this brand. How do I get involved? Friends that we've known for years going, man, what are you guys doing? So the first 10 were really friends, family, customers. And then at some point we hired Fishman and Hot Dish, and they.
So same for me, organic. The only differentiation I think that I had with that process is I purposely wanted to be the salesperson. I wanted to be the person on the hook who sold this family to put their house up for the loan, to open this East Coast Wings and Grill. So I was accountably all in this person's investment, so I can learn the procedure, what the franchisees' emotions were, how they felt, what their disgruntledness would be, what their needs would be. And after doing that 12, 13, 14 times and realize what I had to do to instill this culture I wanted to be franchisee-centric as a brand, then I hired Brad to do the rest of it.
Most brands I've seen over the years, and you'll see it is, the founder is usually good, let's call it better, at one of the two things: operations, sales. So you try to complement what your strengths are with someone who if you're going to do in sales, you better find an operations person that's really good, because you think you can do both, but it takes, pick what you're better at, or more importantly, what you're passionate about. We have a brand here and a founder who has spoken almost every year with us, and Marty knows who I'm talking about. And Dan was the founder of Philly Pretzel. And this is a guy who literally is unbelievably passionate about his brand. Mm-hmm. And what did he do really well?
No, but he was on the floor at every IFE in the beginning because we were in booths across from him.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he believed so much in his brand that sales is what his vision was. And then he brought in great people. Yeah. Then he brought in Marty as COO, which was not probably the best thing he did. But he knew his strengths and watched Philly Pretzel grow.
Let me ask you one objection. You guys got your first couple organic leads that you said, hey, they were clients, they're friends, they were customers. I'm a service-based industry. Our territory, we're operating with 2 corporate locations in 5 territories. We already sucked up that territory where all of our clients are that are making up a large geographic area. What would you recommend for someone like myself to say, hey, if you want to market outside that area and you need to market down towards, I'm an hour from here, but we almost service from my headquarters, we're almost servicing in this area because of how large the units are. How would you recommend to say, hey, how would you go outside your, that core service location that you're providing to try to find people?
Steve, why don't you answer that?
Yeah, your service.
I mean, we can all take it independently. I mean, first of all, your website's got to be super good because the amount of content and the quality of that content and how easily you can be found online is very, very important. So I think it's a combination of great content is the point,
Call to action.
Yeah, absolutely. Call to action. Quality content, and then if you're going to spend money anywhere, I'd spend money on reviews and search, quite frankly. And there's way better digital people out there than me. But, and you might even want to chime in on that, brother, but driving organic is, I think, the bottom line to your website. Would you agree with that, Ryan?
I'm not the expert in this exact field, but we can sit down and I've got a few ideas. So during the pandemic, I was a co-founder of basically a sanitization franchise, and we spun up a couple of very targeted tools, and we grew that to 63 territories in probably under 4.5 months. A lot of that was Ryan Comby. He's very, very solid in that world, but I could give you some ideas for sure.
Yeah, was that a LinkedIn tool?
No, it was a tool called Prospect Direct.
Okay.
Just as one example, there was a whole strategy, but there are tools that you can use.
Yeah, I think what you need, frankly, is someone that can really get in and understand your brand and your ideal candidate, and work with you on creating a profile or what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway, a persona, and then help you be more targeted. Because I think you got to remember when I started, print was king. So that's a long time ago, and then we moved to digital, and so it was a big shift. But I think it's highly personalized these days. There's no silver bullet anymore of any kind. It's all highly personalized based on your target audience or prospective franchisee and best use of funds and gain.
But like Steve said, anybody who investigates you today, where's the first place they're going to go?
Yeah.
Website.
The website. So that's your critical investment.
Number one, yeah.
And when we first met, what I kind of told you is, you have a competitor who spoke here yesterday, who sold out, but there's a lot of territory there. And as I heard from many people, there was a huge wait to get their trees done. Am I correct in that? I'm hearing they have a 6-week backlog.
Wow.
So use that to your advantage. People have a built-in audience already, ability to, with a huge backlog, because everyone's got it, and look for your competitive advantage when you're looking against for franchisees.
Brad, do you think there's room in the broker network space for a competitor to that? Because that was the vehicle. I mean, have you looked at the broker networks as far as IFPG or? Yeah, so I would explore those. I mean, that's what blew up Monster, was broker networks. You've got to be prepared, though, to give up a large portion of your franchise fee.
Half.
And so, at least
least half.
depending on whatever your franchise fee is.
My mind frame, I'm looking at that as, that's an exchangeable fee.
Yeah. Go look for people who understand your space. It could be people in the lawn business. It could be people in, spraying, not only mowing lawns, but anyone who's service in the service business. It's a great add-on product service that you can go into.
Red Boswell was or is here somewhere, and if not, you can find him on the app, and he runs IFPG, and he's a good man, and he'll give you a good, honest feedback about how that if that's a good fit for your brand. Red Boswell. Just look for him on the app.
Just look on LinkedIn, you'll find them.
Yeah, just look at any social
Any
media
social
channel,
platform, yeah.
and then you'll wish you didn't, and he'll be stalking you for the rest of your life.
Or you
You'll
might
probably
walk
be in a
outside
selfie
and
with
see
them
red
as well.
shoes, so.
You can't miss them, red shoes, that's
Yeah.
right.
I've heard that a lot at this conference. I'm going to take that away from you.
No, I think, take it all. I would reach him, but I would be careful what you wish for.
Or red.
Then you have ClickTech too. It's a good supplier in the IFA that can help you drive your
Yeah.
franchising website. Jam, who I think left the room.
He did
but-
leave the room, but
He left now. He probably had to do a phone call.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? Anything else?
We got about 5 more minutes. So,
Yeah.
any final questions?
Was there anything in particular you wanted out of this session? Was it because the title was really how to kind of ramp growth, how to accelerate growth? You want to talk about that for a little bit, or yeah?
Well, by the way, so as Lane said, everyone did download the app, right? So you know how to find these individuals.
Yeah.
Most people, let's call it, if we find out about people who don't want to share information, chances are we won't invite them back, because this is what this conference is about. It's a sharing network group, and so. Any questions, just email them if you don't want to ask in public or whatever it is, you don't feel comfortable about it. And email any of us. Anyone who emails me, I will make sure you get in touch with the right people. Go ahead, Tiffany. Well,
So when you make the jump from 10 to 20, if you could go back to where you were at that time as the founder of the business, would there be anything that you would change? Because I think my fear as an emerging brand is I feel like we're at a good spot to make any significant changes before we grow. So if you could take what you know now, go back then, would there be any significant changes that you'd make?
Yeah, I'm going to let Shane answer this too. It's not fair for me because by the time I started franchising, I had 25 employees because I did that independent, non-franchise deal, and then I started to franchise. So I was so in a different place. But what I would tell you is strategy drives structure. So what I would do is I'd sit down and I would look and I would say, we're at 10, we want to get to 20, right? And this is currently what we're handling at 10. Where are the gaps? What are we not handling as well as we should? Where do we need the expertise? And so if we had to do this for twice as many franchisees, where would the gaps be? And I would expect, like David said, that you're going to have some operational gaps right away. Most people don't start with training and education professionals, franchise business support people. They're just doing it all. So I think it's a fairly easy, and I'm happy to help if you reach out to me, process to just say, we know what we're handling capacity-wise at 10. What is this going to look like at 20, and what are the gaps? And a nice exercise, David mentioned EOS today. A nice exercise is to create what you believe is the right organizational structure for then, but don't put in names, put in roles. Because what happens is you're like, well, he can handle this, this, and this, and it's wrong because the minute you start putting roles in names in instead of roles, you're adapting the role to the person versus making sure that the structure that you need for the business has integrity. So just remember, strategy drives structure. If I want to do 20 or I want to do 30, whatever that is, I know what I'm at now and what I can handle. What would I need then? And then if you need help, reach out to any one of us and just say, well, we have this amount of staff right now, but we think these are the gaps. We'd be happy to look at it with you and give you advice.
Shane?
That was really good advice, roles versus people. And I think often we bring people in that we trust in the beginning or people that we can afford or whatever, and it's not necessarily the right role for that person. So looking at it that way is great. So between 10 and 20, I think just going back, we kind of talked about this last week too, is really just solidifying your operations and creating a program that makes it very, very simple for franchisees to learn. You know, we've always had franchise business consultants, and Steve and I have kind of had this conversation and the importance of them or not, or how you use them. But I think it's really important to make sure that you've got people that really understand the key performance metrics. When you have gaps, why do you have those gaps, and what do you do about those gaps? And when you're talking to those franchisees on that, that consultative call on a weekly basis or what have you, that you can help them identify why they have those gaps and where to get the tools to be able to correct it, because we can't go in and send trainers every single time they have turnover or what have you. So just getting those systems down, making them really simple. You can really overdo it. We did that. We really overdid it. I had people come in and say, I have never seen so many systems than in this franchise. You guys have so much shit. And we had a lot of shit, so we complicated it, right? So just dumbing it down, simplifying it, making it easy for your franchisees to find things and onboard their own team members and all of that, from culture to whatever.
Chances are your 11th through 20th franchisees, on an average, will probably be better than your first 1 through 10. Because you've learned, you've made a few mistakes. But when you're going through 11 through 20, don't forget about the 1 through 10. Because chances are a few of them might need some extra help, encouragement, and they don't want to be the stepchild. They want to feel special still because they're the one who believed in you from the beginning. And, and so that would be like I said, usually they're going to be better 11 through 20 on average, because you've learned the characteristics of which are better, you've learned a lot of things along the way. So, but don't forget 1 through 10, because they're the ones who believed in you at first. And sometimes they might need a little extra help to help them get above, because as they will attest to, a lot of sessions we've talked about is validation. Those are the ones who are going to have to validate you to get you 11 through 20.
But I also think, too, in those first ones, you probably spend a lot of attention on them. You give your time as the founder, because you are doing all the things and you're passionate and you feel like you're the best person for the job. And so me going into Austin when we opened up for that first location and staying in a hotel for 6 weeks to help operate the business with this franchisee was really me learning, like, how do we scale this in a way that is simple enough for them to do it? And what are the problems with the point of sale system or the process at the front desk? And as founders, I think we think, oh, it's just easy. Right? We get it. We created it. We know. And you can't just think it's that easy. So those first 10, I think, you do spend a lot of time with. And then you get maybe a little lackadaisical and you don't spend as much personal time. You've got other people spending the time. So that stuff that's in your head has got to get to the people that are going to actually take care of your franchisees.
Yeah, and Shane's exactly right. And what happened in our brand is that 1 through 10 that you put so much energy into, because they were your first, right? They now became the mentors of the 10 through 20, 20 through 30, 30 through 40. Those 1 through 10s in my brand, they're the ones that are making what my franchisees say, they're making all the money, right? They're the 25 and 27% EBITDA guys and gals, and everybody else is at 17. They turn in those mentor processes just because of what Shane just described, right?
It's just like children. My older one left, so my youngest is my favorite.
This story keeps coming up, by the way.
He's my favorite too, by the way.
Because his brother's not here. But the moral of this thing is you're hearing so much, and I'm going to close this up before I know a lot of people have to make, to really go through it is, franchising is a wonderful, special industry. And we do this conference for young emerging franchisors. We are lucky that we can call upon some experienced people who, like I said, are very close friends that come here and try to help everybody. And that's what this is what it is. The more franchisors succeed, the more franchisees succeed. And when franchisees succeed, then we didn't have private equity around here before, but franchising has become a phenomenal model that drives cash flow. And it's fun, you know, most of us, and, you know, I've been in the franchising industry for over 30 years. Steve has. These guys haven't been in yet. So it's a wonderful, wonderful industry.
You know, Brad, I think just before we wrap up, I would suggest to you that you surround yourself with great people in franchising. You're doing that here and now. IFA. I joined IFA, I was a kid, 1991, and I didn't know anything and anybody. And I came in like you guys, feeling like, wow, this is overwhelming. And just like we're all sitting here saying, call us, we'll reach out to you. Brad and I met, and Sherry through franchising. And
I met everyone here sitting at this table through the IFA.
So the point is don't be afraid to invest your time and energy in those kind of things, because it's going to connect you with people that can have a positive influence on your life and your business. And it's well worth it. It's well worth every penny. I promise you. This is not me pitching IFA as, you know, like an IFA rep, even though they really believe in what they do. It's me just telling you that you need to surround yourself with smart people that have been where you're going.
A quick closing comment from me on what Steve just said. My first IFA, I knew nobody. I went by myself, and I bumped into a guy named Fred DeLuca. And I was introduced to Fred as the guy that owned all of Subway. And so in a conversation with Fred DeLuca, he goes, how can I help you? And I say to him, units 1 through 10, I don't know how to do a field inspection of my franchisees. And before I get to my hotel room, he had emailed me the Subway inspection program. And he says, take out my logo, put your logo, and use it.
Nice. Did you keep that email?
You know, I do have an email. But, you know, who would ever think that Sam Ballas in North Carolina, with, I think at that time, 7 locations, would have Fred DeLuca mentoring him how to do field work in the franchise model. I mean, it's amazing.
That's cool.
I met him too at a booth at IFA Orlando. He was checking out like a homeless and beat up man. Trying to get something.
Yeah, unfortunately, Fred passed away a few years ago. Many of us, and Sherry, who left, that was Sherry's first big account when she was like 23.
I have one question just for you, Sam, and the team. Is the franchisee a customer, a partner, or a boss? Yesterday, somebody...
Good question.
Good question. It's a great question. And
I think the franchisee personally is my partner.
no, for me, he's a customer.
He's a customer.
He's a customer. So my job is to service this customer the best way that I can so they go home happy every night.
But it's okay to think of them as a partner in the brand, but be careful how you use that term, because it has some
Correct.
ramifications.
Legal.
So I felt that way about my franchisees as my partners, but I treated them like a customer. I'm there to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming to Springboard. Thank our panelists. And hopefully we'll see everybody, if not sooner, at IFA in San Diego at the end of February.